Welcome everybody, welcome to the next session of 15 Magical Minutes. Today our presenter is Karen Gallagher. She'll be presenting on paper prototyping. Great topic on improving your skills in creating a great user experience. And for the first time in the history of 15 Magical Minutes, we'll be recording our session, so it may be available online or on DVD. Without further ado,
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Here we go. Did you get it? He had to work. Technical difficulties, of course, because we're videotaping.
okay.
Stick with the keyboard. Well, we'll go with the keyboard.
I think it's because you don't have the PowerPoint selected. Oh, there you go. Now it probably works.
Yay, thank you. Which one are you going?
Right.
Thank you. All right. Sorry. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Gallagher. My product team is product management. Those are my customers. I work for Andy. I've been here about 20 years. We're delivering our third version of WorkComp Workstation into production this week, so that's my current project, and we start risk workstation enhancements. And the technology I'm passionate about is not really technology, I guess, UI, UX, CX. If you don't know what that is, then you missed my last developer forum presentation on that, but I can talk to you more about that after, but it's basically customer experience, user experience. I'm very interested in learning more about automated testing, so it's good Yohai gave that topic last week, and we should see more of those. And DevOps, which I think we're all trying to figure out how that works here at NCCI. My hobbies and interests are music, dancing, Toastmasters, and bowling. And if you want to know any more about Toastmasters or bowling, you can talk to me after the meeting. Okay, so paper prototypes. Here's my commercial. Do you want to save time, money, and frustration and deliver a much better customer experience? Who doesn't want to do that? So paper prototypes are for you. The topics I'm going to cover today are the benefits. Why should we prototype at all? Why paper? You're in IT, you know how to code, right? Why use paper? Getting started, how to get started with paper prototypes, knowing if your drawing is good, getting team consensus, and then usability testing. So, benefits. You get feedback early when you do a paper prototype, right? I have my prototype, I show it to you, you tell me right away if you like it or not. What does that do? It saves you time, saves you money, and you get a better design. Because how many of you have developed something, it's in QA, and then your customer's like, oh, could you change that? Could you move that? Could you do this? It's really hard. You're about to go live in 2 weeks, and now they want you to make all these changes, and you may deliver something that's not the right design to production just because you looked at it too late. And the ultimate goal is to have a better user experience. The better the design, the better user experience. We're not developing these systems for ourselves. We obviously know how to use it, we coded it, but the customer needs to know how to use it. So your goal is to give the customer a better user experience. So those are the reasons that you should do a paper prototype. And then you're like, well, why paper? I'm in IT. I can sit down there and start coding, right? It's fast. I know what I'm doing. Well, not everybody who's doing this is in IT. You are not the only people that are going to be involved in paper prototyping. Also, you don't have any preconceived notions. If you start by coding, what are you going to do? You're going to either use a template, not that templates are bad, but they give you a preconceived notion. Or you may, worse, pull up a system you think is similar and use that as a starting point. Creativity abounds when you do none of those things. When you start with just pencil and paper, no preconceived notions, napkins are awesome. How many of you have heard the story of the next greatest card design or whatever just being done in the bar on a cocktail napkin with somebody's eyeliner? You know, you can get a lot done with just a piece of paper and a crayon. There's also less sense of ownership. If you take the time and sit down and actually code something, no matter what you say, you're invested in it. I spent time on this, it's on my box. I created a project. And low fidelity means more feedback. So fidelity is just the level of how refined and done something is. Low fidelity is a napkin and a crayon High fidelity is an actual working prototype with mock data. If you start with a high fidelity prototype and you show it to your customer, they're much more likely to say, oh, well, I don't really like that, but you worked on it so hard, it's good enough, just leave it alone. They're not likely to say, I really don't like that, it's not gonna work, can we start with something new? You don't want to put your customer in that position of saying, oh no, it's okay, just leave it alone, or not even saying anything at all. So how do you get started? Well, who's involved? That's the number one. The whole core team should be involved in this, as well as UI experts and some SMEs. So your core team, let's say you're on an Agile project, you're gonna have a product owner, and you're gonna have some developers, QA person. Are you gonna have all the people who actually sit and are gonna use the system on a day-to-day basis? No. So you want your core team, but you also want the UI experts who understand a lot about usability to get involved at some point, and then you want the SMEs. Those are the people who are actually going to use the system on a day-to-day basis. You want their input. Find a couple of people who actually are going to use the system and get them involved in your paper prototyping. You got supplies and fancy supplies. Basic supplies, I said it earlier, paper, pen, right? That's all you need. But you can use fancy supplies. I'll give you some fancy supplies after. Fancy supplies are stencils. You can use stencils. This is a desktop stencil. There are also phone stencils and iPad stencils. There are stencils for different controls like radio buttons and things like that. You can also use sticky notes and draw things and paste them to paper, but you don't really need any of that. And then if you want to get more fancy, you can use actual automated tools. PowerPoint and Paint, I'm a PowerPoint girl. I love PowerPoint for prototyping. It's great. It's really easy to use. You can use the stencils electronically and just cut and paste. And you can use professional products like InVision and Sketch. And a friend of mine over there is talking about doing InVision one day, Delia. So no pressure. So how do you know if your drawing is good? You've done this paper prototype. What do I do with it now? How do I know it's good? Well, there's no talent required. You do not have to know how to draw. If it makes you happy, you can use a ruler, make your lines all straight. But all you need to do is to be able to, is this a checkbox? You can make a little square. If it's a radio button, you can make a little circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. Good usability makes for a good drawing. As long as it's usable by the customer, they understand the usability, that's a good enough drawing. And then the most important thing is to test your assumptions. Well, how do I test my assumptions? I drew this picture, how do I know if it's good? Walk through the user stories. So what are they supposed to do on the screen? Walk through the user story by yourself and say, can I perform these tasks? And then you poke your own holes in it. Don't rely on somebody else to look at your design first. You've come up with a design, look at it yourself, try to figure out where it can be improved. And then you want to get team consensus. Okay, so everyone on the core team, let's say, has done a design. You got 6 designs. How do I know what I want to do? They're all different, or maybe some of them are really similar. How do I know what to do next? Okay, so you vote. You take all the designs and you put them up on the wall, you put them on a table, and you take everybody out of the room. And you give everybody stickies, or they can just use a pen and make a check mark. And you come in one at a time into the room, and they check off the elements on the designs that they like. You can put a little sticky next to it, you can put a little smiley face, whatever you want, a little check mark. They check off on each of the designs what they like. And you usually give up to 10 stickers. You don't want them like putting stuff everywhere. And then afterwards, you do this one at a time. You also bring in the UI experts at this time. You can bring in some more SMEs at this time to look at things. And then afterwards, you look at everything together. So I mentioned all those. You stay as neutral as possible. Don't vote on your design because it's your design. Okay? Look at everything and say, you know what, I like that. That's really easy to use. I really understand that. Oh, having a map there is a really good idea. Oh no, there's way too many options here. I don't even know what to do first. Be very neutral. And remember that compromise will make things awful. Don't say, oh, well, you know, I like this one and I like this one. They're very different. What if we like kind of merge the two? That's not necessarily a really good idea. What if this one's really usable and this one's really usable, but this one's a little more usable? Making them a combination isn't necessarily a good thing. Or if Eric did a great design for a different element that you picked, and Marilyn did a good design for another element, you might be leaning towards one of theirs just because they already had a good design on something. That's not necessarily the right thing. Maybe Carl came up with a better option this time. So don't compromise. You can always do an A/B test, which I'll mention on the next slide, to figure out which one of these options is the best. Base all your decisions on usability, not personal opinion, and not popularity. If you have 6 designs and 5 of them use the same object for whatever, and the 6th one is different, don't just go with that object because 5 people out of 6 recommended it. If the 6th one is more usable, you go with the one that's more usable. Did you have a question? So, usability testing. This is when you actually show it to the customers. These are non-team members. These are real customers. You give them tasks from the user stories to perform. So the same task that you tried to use yourself to poke holes in it, you give these to real people. And you say, okay, what if you needed to do X, Y, Z? You have a neutral facilitator. No matter how you think you can be neutral, if you sit down with somebody and have them look at your design and they go like this and they're like, I have no idea, you're going to cringe. You're going to be upset. It's going to show on your face. You need to have a neutral facilitator who won't care that they can't figure it out, and he'll just take notes about that. There should be open-ended questions. Don't tell them what to do. Just say, you need to do this task. How would you approach it? And this is where you do your A/B testing. Those 2 designs that you really liked, show them both and say, okay, if you have this one or this one, which one do you think would be easier to use to perform the task? Let the customer tell you which one is easier to use to perform the task. That's how you know which one is better. You observe and you remain silent. You don't say anything. Now, the developers, it's very helpful for them to see this testing. However, if they're in the room, a lot of times their faces will cringe, they'll be upset. So it's better if they're in another room. So WebEx is really good for this, where you video conference them in so that they can see, but the customer doesn't know what's going on in their faces. You sometimes have to tell the customer they're being observed, and that's all right. But you don't want the developers' faces to be shown to the customer, because that might influence the customer. But it's good for you to watch so you can see, like, you thought this was so usable and was so easy to use, and no customer is getting it right, and then you're like, well, I was wrong. That's how you learn. And then you incorporate the feedback. So after you get all the feedback from the customer testing, you revise your design, and that's where you come up with a better design. And when you're done, you may have to do another round of usability testing with your customers, but you may not. It depends how many changes you actually ended up with. So here's an example of something we did with Workup Workstation. So this is PowerPoint. We had some ideas for what the landing page should look like. Our internal customers were stressing how important it was to see the saved queries and the recent reports, so it was really heavy on that, and the task counts were kind of pushed off to one side or another. And then somebody said, well, why don't we go with a more simplistic approach and see how that works out? And we showed these things to customers, and we got feedback, and we ended up with a much more simplified approach. And we found out that recent updates were really, really important to them. So we blew out the recent updates. They could see all the different data types by state so that they could figure out what's been changed, so they know which reports they want to run. They still have access to their recent reports and saved queries, but they're in the menus up top. They're not taking up the screens, because really what the customer wanted to do was just come in and run a report. They just want to create a new report, or they just want to go to a dashboard. So we put those things front and center, and the customers were really happy with the simplified interface. So, in summary, anyone can do a paper prototype. You don't have to know how to draw. The core team should be involved, but it's also good to bring in expert opinions. Testing is very important. You'll get feedback earlier, you'll save time and money, and most importantly, you will create a better design, which will lead to a way better customer experience. And now, anybody have any questions? Yes?
Like when you're starting this, do you tell like 3 or 4 developers to do a prototype, or is it just one person's in charge of the prototype?
It's not just developers, it's the team. It should be the core team. The customer should be
So you
involved.
all sit together?
The core team, no. You should all go and do your own designs.
Oh, everyone
You should
has
all
their own.
do your own designs, and then you look at them. So you come up with, like I said, you could have 5 or 6 different designs. Everybody should do their own. You don't have to have everybody do their own. Some people may not be interested in it. They may feel like they don't have any ideas. But you should try to get them to do something anyway, because you'd be surprised at people who don't think that they have any ideas, how many ideas they actually have, and they're just nervous. Which is one of the reasons the anonymity is really good. So if you're afraid because you've never done a prototype before, you've never designed a screen before, and you don't think you know what you're doing, and you don't want to be embarrassed, nobody has to know it's yours. You just draw the picture and you give it in. That's all you do. You give it, so if you're in an Agile team, let's say the Scrum Master, you give it to the Scrum Master, okay? So the Scrum Master doesn't have to say, oh, this is Nancy's design, or this is Karen's design, or this is Carol's design. It doesn't matter whose design it is. It's just a design. So you have all these designs, and what you're trying to do is to have the best product. So it doesn't matter who drew it. It really doesn't matter. It matters that it's the right design.
But then you said don't compromise, but if they like certain things from one and certain.
No,
from
you do.
another.
That's where you
Oh.
come with team consensus.
Okay.
But if you can't make a decision, don't compromise in the decision.
Okay.
Come up with what you think is the best option. And if the team will agree, so yeah, this is the best option, great. But if you have 2 that you can't pick between, don't compromise. Do the A/B test. Show, here's one option, here's another option. So you may have like 7 elements on the screen. 6 of them may be identical and 1 element is different because the thing you don't want to compromise on. You show them both versions. Here's the one with the 6 elements and the 1 different element on option A, and then the one option B, just that 1 element is different. You show it to both, you show both versions to the customer, and you let them tell you which one they found to be more usable. And that's the way you know really which one is more usable. Because it's very hard to be objective. It really is, especially, it's my screen, you know, once I drew it, it's my screen. I can't like say it's not mine. It's very hard to do that. So what you want to try to do is just give it over at the end, and when you have your actual design you show to the external customer, it's not my screen anymore, it's our screen. Because we all did a design. We all looked at it together. We came up with a team consensus. So maybe it's my menu and it's your list box and it's your map. But it doesn't matter, it's not anymore. It's the team's screen. So it doesn't matter who picked which elements.
And you do this screen by screen then, is that?
Usually you do it screen by screen, yeah. But you usually, like, you work on a specific set of user stories at a time. So you work through that, either that feature or that epic, depending, but it's usually just at a feature level, and you work through that at a time, and you get through one thing, and you could be working on the next one while you're doing usability testing on the first one. But sometimes what you get back from usability testing could
Will
affect
change,
other
right.
screens as well. So you want to get that initial feedback. Like if your whole concept is based on, they're going to do X, Y, and Z here, and then my next screen is going to do this, and like, that didn't actually work out. It didn't test well, it may revise things. But that's why you have to sometimes do multiple rounds of usability testing. But it's so much cheaper if you find that out here than if you build the whole thing, and you're in QA and you find it out, and you have to tear it all apart and fix it, because people can't use it. And when you go into customer testing, do you want to be in a beta test and be told, I have no idea what to do? I mean, that's a terrible situation to be in, and that's why a lot of products fail. So we don't want to be there, and you really don't want to go to production and like, you know, and then you start to hear rumors, oh, I can't use this new system, it's so hard to use, I don't know what to do. Nobody wants to be that developer. You know, they think that their system is really great. So you don't have to ever put yourself in that position if you do paper prototyping. You know you're going to have a more usable design. I mean, nothing's ever usually perfect. You're always going to get feedback from somebody, and somebody's going to not like one thing or another. But if you do this, I guarantee you're going to deliver a much more usable system every time. And it's very cheap, it's very fast, it's very easy. This doesn't take long. It takes a couple of weeks. You know, it's fixing something after it's already gone live, it's never going to be right. So you save a lot more by doing it this way. Yeah.
When you're observing users over WebEx, let's say, can you generally hear them?
Yes, we do want to hear what they're saying. We want to hear them, like, if they're getting frustrated, we want to hear the words they're using. Like if they're, well, I didn't understand that, or they may actually say, I'm used to seeing an hourglass. I'm used to seeing a magnifying glass. Now, that's actually really good feedback, because you want to be consistent with things that people are used to seeing. Search boxes usually have a magnifying glass next to them. If you put an eyeball there, it's really cute, but it's not what people are used to seeing. So it's not usable. You want to make it as easy and intuitive as possible. You want to use things that people, especially on our website, you do want to have certain things that, you know, if you're deploying something that's in a suite of products and everywhere the search box looks like this, well, don't just change the search box. That makes it unusable for the customer. Even, it may not be the best way to do the search, but it may be actually a bad idea, and a usability expert might tell you that too. Or the SME that you bring in might tell you that. But every other screen works exactly this way. If you make this screen work differently, it's going to be really, really hard for my whole staff to learn. That's valid feedback. So you have to really understand why you're getting the feedback you're getting, and you have to listen to it. You don't just do things blindly. You really need to bring those experts in. You really need to bring the actual customers in and get their understanding of how to use the screen and see how they use it, see how they react.
When you're doing user testing, you tell them you want them to talk out loud, right?
Yes.
When you're thinking, you
Yes.
say,
Yes, exactly.
tell us what you're thinking out loud.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah, you do definitely want them to articulate anything that's going on in their mind, like, oh, that looks like this, or that looks like this, or why isn't that green? Like, if they're actually thinking, why isn't that green? Why would you make that red? That's really valid. Like, sometimes people just make something red because they like red. Red usually means error or warning, or so sometimes people are like, wow, I'm surprised that that's red. I would expect that to be green. That's actually really good information. So that's a really good point. Thanks, Chris.
And when you're talking about compromise, you weren't really saying you can't put two things together and make one good thing. You were saying if you have two good things that stand on their own,
Yes.
keep them both.
Yeah.
Not saying, because I think people got the message you were saying, don't take two things and mix them together. But if that was a good idea to mix them
Yes.
together, that's okay.
Yeah. So you
Right.
right,
Like
exactly. It's when
Nancy
you
was
can't
saying.
come to consensus that you don't want to compromise. It's when you can't figure out which one is better and you can't come to any consensus. That's when you don't want to compromise. Or if you know, some people really like this one and some people really like this one and the team is torn, do the A/B test. And then it's very neutral. It's not specific to, you know, this design or that design. It's just like, customer, which one is easier for you to understand? And let them tell you which one is easier to understand. So now I'm going to give you some stencils. So if you just take one and pass them around. So you can make copies of the stencils, and anytime you need to design, just they're all, no, just take one second. Yeah, they're all paper clipped together. So anytime you need to do a design now, if you know you're going to do a desktop design, let's say, and you only care about desktop because it's an internal app and you don't care that much about the tablet and the phone, you could just look at the desktop one. But if you know that people are going to start using your stuff on a tablet and a phone, then this template is good because it has a phone and it has a tablet. So you could do the tablet this way or this way. This is the desktop, it's just plain. But when you start to think about your phone design, it's going to be very different than what your tablet or your desktop design is going to be. So you may start with one or the other. Some people start mobile first. It really depends on what your app is. But you want to start with one or the other. You either want to start with desktop or mobile first, and then you want to develop your designs based on that. And then we can help you with those kinds of things. Anybody who's done this kind of design can help you with understanding what works better on a mobile device versus a desktop device. Because those are things you have to learn over time also if you haven't done that kind of a design yet and thought about mobile. But those are just some specific things for that. And if there's not enough, I can send them out also. But the other thing that's on there is this little set of stencils. This is also available electronically, and it's got things like check boxes and grids, and it's just to show the object. So if you want to cut, you can like make a whole bunch of copies of this, and you can cut them out, and you can put them on the table, and you could do like just, everybody just play, and you can get your whole team around the table. It's a lot of fun. I really wanted to do that today, but we really don't have enough time. I was going to give you something to design. But you could do that with your team, just like, okay, let's pick this function. Everybody play. You give everybody a couple of these, let them cut them out. Or you could just draw. And you could do sticky notes, and you could draw things on your sticky notes. But it's a lot of fun. It's a really good exercise. You could do it with any function. It doesn't matter. You can make up a function just to try it. And I really encourage everybody to just get their feet wet, try paper prototyping. You're going to be so happy that you did because you're going to realize that your screen designs are so much better and your customers are going to really be wowed. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Voting is open for our next topic. Our next presentation will be Building Better Teams, presented by